All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to the St. Clair College Women in STEM speaker series. I am your host, Sue Taylor, and I am the supervisor of the Genesis Entrepreneurship Center here at St. Clair College. So we will have a chance to ask questions at the end of the Q&A, at the end of the interview, sorry. And if you could be so kind as to make a note of what you wanted to ask Mel and save it to the end, we'd really appreciate that. So the Women in STEM Club was started earlier this year to fill a need to support female students at the college in male-dominated programs. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the acronym STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and it has been more recently updated to include entrepreneurship and manufacturing. So you might also hear the word STEAM, which incorporates the term for arts in the definition. So within the STEM Club, we have students ranging from all different programs across the college, students from civil engineering, we have mobile app development, millwrights, heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning, data analytics, biomedical engineering, robotics, power line technician, policing, construction management, and the list goes on and on and on. So some of these young women are in classes of 60 to 70 students and are either the only female or one of 2 or 3 in their entire program. So the St. Clair College Women in STEM Club, we offer support, mentorship, networking events, opportunities such as capstone projects, and guest speakers, which is what brings us all together today. So our goal is to support and foster these young women and to show them that they can accomplish all they set out to achieve and then some. The speaker series was developed to host what I like to refer to as STEM champions. So women who have excelled in male-dominated industries and environments, women who are leaders, women that serve to inspire and act as role models and mentors to these young women. So far, the series has hosted women representing many STEM careers, and we've spoken with the chief of police, a chief operating officer within a hospital. We've had a periodontist who also happens to be the president of the Ontario Dental Association. We've had an electrical engineer, a machinist, a 2-time Olympic athlete, an award-winning director and producer, and an engineering senior project manager for a defense contractor. So today's guest is from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and works as a forensics explosive chemist. So I'd like you to please welcome Melanie Brochu. Welcome, Melanie. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm gonna myself. Hi.
Hi, there you are.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Unmute yourself there. Sorry about that. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you.
So let's start with our usual question so tell me a little bit about yourself. Sort of where you're from, what you studied, how long, work life, family life, children, anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of status quo for me to have tech issues. So of course I'm doing this with my laptop. So I'm sorry. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Oh, we can hear you great.
Okay, perfect. So yes, my name is Melanie Brochu. As Susan said, I work for the RCMP as an explosive chemist. I have been there for 16 years, not the entire time as an explosive chemist, the last 13 years in that role. But I'm from Sudbury, Ontario. And if there's anyone from Sudbury watching this tonight, I'm actually from Chelmsford, Ontario, because they always make me do that distinction. But I went to school, I grew up in Chelmsford. I went to school in Sudbury. I went to Laurentian University where I studied forensic biology. So originally intended to go into university to study biology, to do a biology undergrad and hopefully get into medical school. But that changed in my second year and I went into forensics at Laurentian. Following that, I went to college and did chemical engineering in college, and then found my way to the RCMP in 2005. I am a mom of 2 lovely girls, 8 and 11 years old, Katya and Michaela, and they will be watching this. So I told them I would absolutely mention them. And yeah, those are probably the best teachers I've had in this lifetime is those 2 precious ones. So
give them a shout out. Absolutely.
They deserve.
That's awesome. So you talked about graduating from school. So how many students were in your graduating class? And of that, how many of them were women in the programs you studied?
So it's funny because I was really trying, it's funny the things that you forget as you get older. And I was trying to remember my graduating class, and I think we were at least 7, maybe 9, definitely less than 10 that graduated, because we were the first year of that program. So that was the first year the program was conceived. We were the first graduating class, and we were actually mostly women. There was probably, if there were 7 of us, there were 5 women and 2 men.
Wow. Okay.
Now, it's not surprising because it was a biology course, and it tends to be a little bit more heavy with women in biology, biology programs, but, or was time anyway.
Was that at Laurentian, or is that the college program that you did afterwards?
So when I went to college, it was a chemical course. It was definitely more guys, being the engineering sort of base there. We were probably a handful of girls and the rest were guys. I don't exactly remember how big our class was, but I'd say probably 1/3 were women, 2/3 were men. Yeah.
Are there other schools in Canada that have those programs?
So for the forensic sport program specifically?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, there are. At the time, I feel like it was Laurentian University in Sudbury of all places, and Toronto. But I know there's other universities now that have the course. There's one university in Montreal. There's one in BC. So UBC has it. U of T still has. Laurentian University still has their forensics program. And I think St. Mary's in Halifax also still has a forensics program. Okay. I think there's a couple of colleges as well that do maybe some forensic type certificates or diplomas of some kind, but in terms of university, I think those are the only ones. Yeah.
And so what attracted you to it in the first place? Was somebody, do you have an influence for that, or how did you find out about the program?
So oddly enough, I had no interest in it. I don't think I had ever even watched CSI at the time. I probably had some awareness of CSI, but wasn't really into it at the time. I was going in, like I said, for a biology undergrad. My sole mission in school was to get to medical school and become a heart surgeon. That was it. That was my path. And then in my second year, they developed the forensics program. And I looked into it a little bit further, and I thought, this is interesting, where science intersects law, and seems like it would be pretty cool. The professor who developed the program was a forensic anthropologist, so was working in forensics, and I thought, well, I'll try it. I knew if anything, it would just be more fun, a fun way to spend my 4 years in undergrad. But I went into that program, and I swear within 3 weeks, that was it. I was sold, and I knew that was what I was meant to do. I was meant to be in the forensics field, wherever that took me. I wasn't quite sure which way I would go in forensics, but I knew that it had to be some type of law and science mix, because it just became a passion of mine.
So now, do you watch shows like CSI and like Forensic Files and go, wrong, no, yeah? Do you watch it for content and want to call the producer and tell them?
University, I absolutely did start to watch it and for what it was. And then I stopped because it was already so much a big part of my day. It was kind of the last thing I wanted to do in the evening. Yeah. And so what I really got into was a little bit more on the forensic psychology side. Like, I started reading more books about that because I found that interesting. But no, I don't watch CSI today. Although I feel like, the biggest problem with those shows is really just the timing, right? They have to make everything happen in an hour.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Not the reality.
And cases can go on for months and years, and they're an hour.
Yeah, exactly. But otherwise, I mean, it seemed pretty accurate at the time. I was like, it's not so bad, except I wouldn't really pick up a blade of grass and be able to tell you which, species of grass that was. But
right. I came from a medical background, and so I always watch House and always am like questioning the diagnosis all the time and trying to guess what it is too. So I totally get that. So let's talk about your actual position. So forensic explosive chemist, like, what does that entail? What's your day-to-day look like? Like, are you in a lab? Are you out on scene? What's your day? Tell us about your day.
since I posted that I was going to do this, I posted on my social media that I was going to do this interview, and it's funny how many people have gone like, wow, that's a bad A title, like, holy. Sound pretty cool, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, if I can just start with I work in a forensic lab. There's multiple disciplines in a forensic lab. So for anyone who's listening and wants to get into forensics, I'm on the chemistry side, or what we call trace evidence. But there's also the biology side that does the DNA. We have our toxicologists that screen for drugs and alcohol and body fluids. We have our firearms section. We have a counterfeit section. And so we do actually end up all working together for, probably mostly for me with the DNA and the biology side. We do end up working together because really to solve a crime, it's not just one discipline that's going to make it happen. So when I actually first started at the lab, I started in the biology section. That was really just because they were the only ones hiring. And luckily I had a strong enough biology background to get into the biology section. It's not until a few years later that openings finally came up into chemistry, and I was able to go into the chemistry section there. In Ottawa itself, we do explosives analysis and we do gunshot residue analysis. I'm actually almost qualified on the gunshot residue side. But a day-to-day for me right now, if I'm just going to stick to the explosive side, is entirely different than it was 8 years ago. 8 years ago, day-to-day was you came into the lab, you had your casework, exhibits were sent from a scene from an investigator, exploded devices, commercial explosives would come in, and it was all about just identification. Tell me what was in there, tell me what was used, write the report and make sure everything's kosher for court. That was the gist of it, and that was fun and exciting, and there was a lot of training involved in that, and as anyone can imagine, it's not really training you get in school. It's really really on the job training, but like I said, it's really changed now. I think it's pretty prevalent in the media. We talk a lot about terrorism, we talk a lot about homemade explosives today. And that's really changed our day-to-day incredibly. So, now we still do the regular casework. I'm still in the lab from time to time, and often enough, those kinds of things get driven more from street gangs, with a mix of drugs and explosives. But now today we've just become way more dangerous, and police have to be way more cautious today. So there's a whole officer safety issue when we're talking about homemade explosives, because they're the ones that are going to the scene for the most part, or they're the first responders on scene, and they need to make sure that they get home safely at night. And with homemade explosives, there's a huge danger in that. Yeah. There's a danger of not knowing how stable the materials are, not knowing really what you have because it's just a white powder on a counter. And some of these explosives are extremely sensitive, where people today are making primary explosives, which basically means it's super sensitive to heat. So a match could initiate it. Yeah. So we do a lot of opinion. We do a lot of technical reach back for them. They call us and they're at a scene and here's what I'm standing in front of. What do I do? Right. And so with that as well is just providing opinion on terrorism related publications. A new publication comes out, we have to provide opinion on if what they're saying is actually making sense. Is it viable? If somebody actually made it the way they're telling them to make it, will they survive that at the end of the day, or the way they're making it isn't safe and they're going to lose a couple fingers. So it's really become a lot more use of the chemistry knowledge, because we really are just limited by our creativity today. We have to be as creative as the 15-year-old kid in his garage who's just super brilliant and what to do, but pushes the boundaries and tries new mixtures, So that's really become a big focus for us. Now, with that, we need to train our officers. We need to educate them because they don't all have a chemistry background. And I say officers, it is for the most part, bomb techs that we train, but we do also train our IDENT officers. They come through, investigators come through for, chemistry of explosives training, just so that they can have an understanding of what they're going to encounter when they're at a scene.
Well, I think that the constable would have to be able to recognize what's going on so they can call the bomb tech and then call you. So
exactly, yeah. We've provided training. Even firefighters have come for training as well. So any first responder, anyone that can actually walk into a scene or, a clan lab, like a clandestine lab scene, which is not always obvious if it's drugs or explosives when you're talking about basic chemicals that sort of cross over quite a bit between the two. So, very much more training. We're giving a lot more training. We have to synthesize explosives for our training because it's not something you can just go buy off the shelf. So it's not something you can buy commercially, sorry, is what I'm trying to say. You actually can buy the chemicals off the shelf, but not the actual homemade explosives. So we synthesize quite a bit for our bomb techs to be able to get a comfort around handling the material. And for a while, we were also doing canine training, which is, that was like favorite things to do. In my role today, that's definitely still to this day stands out for me as one of my most favorite things.
That was actually the next thing I was going to ask you. So what is the coolest thing about your job? So clearly the canine part is just because you're a dog lover or just because it was cool to do?
100% a highlight. We've had to stop doing any type of external training at the moment, largely driven because of COVID, but also because we're just such a small unit. And we just don't have the resources to be able to train everyone, right? It's like, we have to train our bomb techs. That's always going to happen. We're never going to give up that service. But unfortunately, we've had to cut in some places, and canine was one of them, which is really too bad because they're really the ones that screen, rooms and screen areas and screen airplanes and vehicles and all that to keep our, VIPs and dignitaries safe. But I'm sure it will come back. And I look forward to that day. So definitely one of my favorite things is the canine training. However, there's been a lot of cool things, as you can imagine. It's kind of like
I wanted to have you on here.
Yeah.
I know you have cool stories.
Yeah. I kind of have to pinch myself sometimes, right? Because it's like, did I just seriously get to do this?
Yeah.
Like, this is not something I ever pictured for myself years ago, or when I was in university, that I'll actually be getting to do stuff like this. But, the fun stuff, the stuff that's just to play around and have fun, are the range days. And usually we end up going to military range, and it's like a demo day. So it's like a day where, either the military or the police just have a ton of expired explosives or explosives from their storage areas that they need to get rid of because they've had too much, whether they've confiscated them or whatnot, but they just need to have a big burn day. And those tend to be my favorite because then we talk about very, very large amounts of explosives all dumped into one big giant hole in the ground. And you just get to drive a kilometer away and feel the earth shake from a kilometer away. Like, it was just some of the coolest days are those days. What else?
We talked earlier about different things that, and you were using some of the language, like you talked about charge before when we were talking earlier. So what's some terminology that you can share with us that is specific to your job? Because I thought that was cool because you say it so offhandedly, and yet I was like, hey, I didn't want to act like I didn't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
Basically, to have like a successful explosive, you need all the same elements that you need to be able to build a fire with, right? You need a fuel, you need oxygen, and you need an initiation source. So for a fire, like the wood is the fuel, the oxygen is drawn from the air, right? We need to get the air low to keep the burn going, to sustain the burn. But we need to light it. And so it's essentially the same principle with explosives. So we need an oxidizer, what we call an oxygen, so our source of oxygen, and we need a fuel. But in explosives, those are chemical sources of oxygen and chemical fuels. So it's not like a piece of wood. We're talking about chemical compounds. We're mixing them together, and then we initiate them. So initiate them meaning we light them. It could be as simple as a match if it's sensitive enough, but it might also need what we call a detonator. So that's like a small amount of explosives to initiate the larger charge, which is the larger mass of explosives, is what I'm talking about when I say that. Or you've probably heard things like boosters. These are very like familiar terms for people in industry, like mining industries or construction industries. But yeah, if I say stuff and you're like, just stop me.
I thought it's good for definition, because again, you hear the stuff when we're watching TV shows like that. So it's nice to kind of have that background, because they talk about it in the same way. They don't explain it when they're on TV too either, right? So
yeah, they just throw it out.
Have you besides your range days and that, what about cases? I don't know if you can talk about them or not, but have you had any interesting cases that you've worked out, obviously ones that are public knowledge that you've had experience with that you can talk to us about or share anything?
I need to tell you though, one of my coolest moments for me was when I first came into the explosive section, and I went for explosives training with the FBI, and we got to go to Quantico. That was probably, as like a young woman freshly into her explosives career, was probably one of the coolest things too. I needed to add that one that Warrenton mentioned, because it's just, and now I see it on TV or I see it in movies, right? And I'm like, man, I was there. Like, that's so cool.
Okay, so actually, oddly enough, I had the same experience. I have an aunt whose best friend was in the FBI as a supervisor, and we got to go visit Quantico and see it. So when you're watching like Silence of the Lambs and they're running through the forest, I was like, we were there, so I totally get that. That's too funny.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
Very, very cool. But I didn't get to do cool stuff while I was there. I just got a tour. Very different.
So like two big cases come to mind for me that I personally worked on. We've had definitely a good handful of cases come through our lab that were quite big, but the two for me that really stand out was I'm going to say their names, so it's fine because it's all public knowledge anyway. But Aaron Driver, that was in 2016, and if you've not heard of this case, he was dubbed Canada's first suicide bomber. And we actually went very close to where you guys are for that one, because that was in Strathroy, Ontario. That in terms of how quick we need to deploy, this one was probably one of the fastest. We had a call around dinner time one evening on the 14th, and it was like, go pack up, you're heading to Strathroy, because a bomb just went off in a car. And that was all the information we had. And we left at about 3:00 in the morning. And when I say we have a team, like a team that deploys, like a national sort of explosives deployment team that goes out together. And that usually consists of 1 or 2 explosive chemists, such as myself, some IDENT officers, and some bomb techs. And for this one, there was 4 of us that came from Ottawa. There was 1 bomb tech, 1 IDENT officer, and 2 of us from the lab. So 2 chemists from the lab. And, that was probably one of the most interesting cases that I worked on in terms of understanding terrorism and how prevalent it is in this country, and how protected the general population is from the knowledge of it. I think another example of how very fortunate it is that we have great relationships with other countries, UK and the US, and the Five Eyes. They talk about the Five Eyes, Australia, New Zealand, because it really is like a global effort against terrorism. It really is. And in this case with Aaron Driver, we happened to be tipped off by the FBI. And thankfully we were, because we were able to get there in time to prevent him from successfully completing his mission. You know, he's a young man with, unfortunately, a very poor opinion of Canada and our involvement overseas. He was radicalized quite young. He had originally converted to Islam religion, but peacefully. He was not violent, but that sort of spiraled very quickly for him. He got into a very dark place. And it's very common for young men, I'll say, and probably young women, but we see it more with men that just feel very isolated and alone and have no sense of community anywhere and are just looking for somewhere to belong, become radicalized. Yeah. Because it gives them a sense of purpose and it gives them a community to engage with. And unfortunately, they prey on people like Aaron Driver. But still to this day, we don't know what his target was. But I mean, he left his house with a backpack full of explosives, and he was going to complete that mission, you know. Fortunately for us, when he came out of his residence and got into a taxi cab is when the RCMP engaged him, and he initiated his device in the back seat of the cab. Luckily, the construction of it, we'll leave it at that, made it so that only his initiator, so the small amount of explosives that he was using to initiate the main charge, only that small amount is what initiated. So in our world, we call that a partial detonation. And because only that small amount did, you know, they both survived that blast.
So how's the cab driver? Yeah.
Cab driver survived, believe it or not, with no injuries at all, not a scratch on him. Luckily, when the police came up the driveway and engaged them, he sort of leaned over, either to grab his money or his personal belongings, because he knew, okay, well, we're not leaving here anytime soon. You know, they're here for you. And he went to grab his personal belongings and his money. And by bending over like that and leaning over into his seat, he became completely sheltered from his seat. Because in the device, there was ball bearings, which is typical to add some to their device because they want to kill and injure people. And so he just became completely protected from all of it. Also being a partial detonation, you know, it wasn't the full blast. And so he was able to walk away from that. I'm not going to say happily, you know, I think there might still be a civil suit in courts for that because, you know, and understandably, how could you let me pull up into that driveway knowing that there might be someone in there that had really, you know, so yeah, with that case, man, it gets hot in the South. It was in August of 2016, and we were sitting there in these, you know, head to toe covered up in our Tyvek suits and just sweating buckets trying to process that scene. You know, there were 2 investigations going on. You know, Aaron Driver, he was killed by the police intervention. And so that was one investigation going on. So we had the OPP there doing that side of the investigation. And then the RCMP, we did the whole terrorism side of the investigation. Wow. Into what explosive he used and how the device was constructed and all of that. Now that was one of them. The other one was the year before. And this one's kind of fun because it gave me like very much a Hollywood moment with that one, where I was in New York on a conference in New York. And I was there with some friends that I work with. I'll call them friends, but you know, bomb techs. I was there with chemists from National Defense. I was there with intelligence agency people, and we were sitting in this auditorium one day, and they put up a phone number, and they said, because we couldn't bring our cell phones in because the material is so sensitive, and so they put up a phone number on the screen, and they said, you know, if your agency needs to get in touch with you for any reason, this is the number they call. And I just remember going like, I'm not that important, like I don't need to write that down. And sure enough, the next day, we're all sitting there again, and they put up the phone number, and I was like, okay. And somebody comes walking up all the way up to the top of the auditorium where we're sitting, and someone, I have no idea who he is, and he goes, "Are you Melanie?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you Melanie Brochu?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You need to come with me." And I thought, okay. And I walked down, and I walked out with him, and he said, "Your agency's trying to get in touch with you. You have to leave. You have to go back to Canada. They need you back home." And I said, okay. I thought it was a joke because I scoffed it off the day before.
Right.
But no, it was a case out in Halifax. And so they sent my Hollywood moment was they sent an RCMP plane to come pick me up. And I took the jet back to Halifax, and I thought, well, if this doesn't.
No, I've made it.
Nothing will, right? Like, woo, I felt important in that moment. But that was a Chris Phillips case, and that was a very intelligent gentleman who had all kinds of degrees, chemistry degrees. He had gone to dentistry school, very, very well-educated man. I think he did work for the American military, but was let go because he had some mental health issues. But he was living in Halifax and had a very poor opinion of police, and had a very toxic chemical in his possession. And he had told his friends and his wife that he was going to take a trip to Ottawa, and he was going to take this toxic chemical with him, and he was going to ensure that he would get pulled over, and he would throw this toxic chemical at police and hopefully kill some. And so, but what happened with that was when they went into his cottage, it was a cottage filled with industrial grade lab equipment and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of chemical bottles. And then they just said, okay, the bomb techs just stepped back and said, this is way beyond our scope and to deal with. And so that case was very interesting because it did go to court. But I got to work very closely with the Health Canada chemists on the drug side. Kind of the first time we leveraged using cameras on the bomb techs or on the ident officers going into the scene. So to keep us safe, we got to sit in a trailer and just watch them go through each cabinet with their camera and say, yay or nay, is this a problem or is this okay? And we spent a few days there just pulling chemicals out, disposing of them, or putting them aside for disposal. So there was no explosives there, but there probably, he could have made some. And that's kind of why I ended up going to court to testify on that case. Kind of well, what was possible? What did he have in possession, and what was possible? What could he have made?
They're harmless on their own, but when they go together, it's not so good.
That's it. Really, it's not illegal to have chemicals in your possession.
Right.
But if you're synthesizing explosives, and that's where you get into trouble.
Do they have little, like, I want to say like a drone, but do they ever use something mechanical to go in to go check things, or do you need that human element for most of those things?
So
set it off too.
There are drones that get used more so usually to map an area. So if a bomb has gone off and we want aerial view imaging, I suppose, we have used them for that. Now that's not me, clearly, but there is a unit that does operate the drones itself. But in terms of just acquiring intelligence, setting them in, I don't think so yet. I not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Okay. It to really, the problem with doing that is if something needs to be moved or turned so that we can see what it is, or, what's the risk of that drone hitting something and knocking it over. And, that could be enough to initiate some explosives in some cases. So I think you really need the human element still at this time, for sure.
Me watching too much CSI, apparently. So, yeah. So all of that is pretty intense, like, the different working on the cases. And again, I'm sure that much of your job is that you have to spend a lot of time being very meticulous and organized and on your game. So when you're not on your game, what do you do to create that sort of work-life balance? And what do you do for your self-care, hobbies, things like that to keep yourself, like, you got to bring yourself down, I'm sure, that because coming home from a day after work like that, it's got to be,
Yeah, it's,
taxing.
it can be long days and it's exhausting, for sure. I think for me, I think the best investment I've ever made in myself is just keeping myself healthy, so that the recovery from those really long days, or really just trying days where you have to be on the entire time because you make one mistake or you slip up once and that could injure someone, right? Or that could cause type of injury, or cost someone's life. So, um, I work out and I eat well, and that sounds so simple, but I think it's really made a huge difference, in terms of my energy and my ability to recover from those days. I love hanging out with my kids. Sometimes it's just they understand when I have a long day, right? Like, I think, and for them, they want to help me through those days. Those days where mommy's just really tired, like they're fine with just sitting with me and letting me decompress on those days, which is brilliant. But yeah, for fun, I still play volleyball, at 42, why not? I still play beach volleyball. So that's also, I guess, another physical activity that I love to do. And then, yeah, I think, I don't want this to sound corny, but just like personal growth stuff, like I'm really obsessed with that. Just like, not just the physical health, but the mental health side.
Love it.
Yeah.
I think it's actually probably nice for your girls to watch this because you don't maybe tell these stories with them. So it might be more empathetic when mom comes home tired.
Yeah. I share a lot with them. I think it's really fun for them to feel involved. And there's even been times where we've had like a canine training day and I've had to run out to get something, and I take them with me so they can see, what my world is like on days like that. And they love it, right? Like, they love it. They call me a nerd all the time, but they still think I'm pretty cool. But I think, yeah, it's just so important to me to involve them into all the things that I do, so that if I have them and I still want to get a workout in because that day that's just really going to ease the stress and the tension, then I invite them to join me in that. It's like just making them, I think it's important for them to see that side. It's important for them to see me stressed and what I do to cope with the stress.
I'm sure you're setting an example and sort of showing
Yeah.
what you're doing. No, that's fantastic.
Kids they just want to be around you, right? Like so.
They're good for us because then they get to the point when they get older and then they stop liking you and won't hang out with you. So, embrace these moments. Trust me. Mine still sort of likes me, so I'm okay for now. But okay, so we always like to talk about sort of the mentorship piece with the speaker series because I think it's a very, very important piece of the puzzle and kind of forming young minds and helping them to succeed. So who has served as your mentor or an influencer along kind of your path and helped you along the way? Like, did you have anybody that stood out to you that you can think of? Or, and I know you do a little bit of mentoring too. If you can speak to that, we'd love to hear about that too.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to share about that. I'm sort of lucky that I've always had a very strong support system around me. And I was kind of raised by some very strong women. And so, first and foremost, them, I think, for creating the independence in me and that sort of perseverance and go-getter and never give up and get things done type of attitude for sure came from those women in my life. Forensics, I think Dr. Fairgrieve from Laurentian University definitely fostered that love. Like, I think his passion for what he did was admirable. And I thought, I want some of that. I want to be that passionate about what I do every day. And there was one manager that does stand out in my mind that, when I finished college, I went to college for chemistry because they had an internship program with the chemistry section of the RCMP. And so I went back to college after university and just to get this internship. And when I got in, it was this woman who was the manager of the unit at the time. And there was something about her, like she was just a force. You know, she was so knowledgeable and so confident and so assured, and just took care of her people. Like she was the perfect model for what a manager should be, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much for upper management. She was probably more of a thorn in their side, but in terms of her taking care of her team, but also walking the walk and being knowledgeable and being out there and fostering all these relationships with the different agencies and giving us a name out there, you know. She definitely stands out, and she took me under her wing. And when she couldn't hire me out of my internship, she still stayed in touch and said, I will get you back here one day as soon as I have a spot, you know? And so it was kind of nice to have that like sort of cheerleader in your corner that was like, yeah, you deserve to be here. I want you here. I just don't have a box for you yet. But when I do, I'm going to come back and get you. So just stay here, do what you got to do to stay here in the lab so I can just come get you when we're ready, kind of thing. So, you know, those are definitely the ones that stand out in terms of people that I looked up to. You know, there's a real mentorship program the way there are today, which I think is amazing. We didn't really have that back then, but you sort of hung on to these people that like had these qualities that you wish you had, you know? So that was kind of like, well, I'd really like to be more like that. So I'm going to stay close to you. So that was kind of our mentorship programs at the time. But yeah, so when this opportunity came up, so there's a program through McGill University. It's an NSERC funded program, and it's called Promote. I knew nothing about the program when the call for mentors came through, and it came through by email to our lab. I think it was sent to one contact person at the lab, and then it was distributed to women because specifically targeted to women in the science industry at the time. I read up on it and I thought, I absolutely want to do that, because I think there's so much value in having someone you can just talk to about what it's like when you're in your field and you're working for a company, or you're working for the government, or you're working wherever. What is it really like after school? You know, how hard is it? You know, what's that transition like? And so this Promote program, so I hope I get like it, I hope I get it right, but it's, I wrote it down somewhere. It's Program Molecules for Therapeutic Sensing and Diagnostics. So it's very much like a biotech focused. You know, they have, I think, 11 or 12 researchers. And there's 6 different universities that are involved in it, and their students are global. I think there's one in Russia, there's one in Colombia, and so it's not just in Canada, which I thought was absolutely amazing. But what they offer is the one-on-one mentoring, and so students gets partnered with a mentor, and they meet once a month for the length of the year. And we have our topics of discussions laid out for us, and we just spend the time together and discuss. And so I think it's pretty great because it allows them to sort of see what the transition was like for us at the time. You know, mistakes we've made, the lessons we've learned. We talk about work-life balance, right? We talk about what were the greatest challenges for you when you transitioned. You know, if you could tell yourself something to the you 12 years ago, what would it be? What would have helped? You know, what would you have liked to have known? And so I think those conversations are just so important to have and so helpful. And we also go through the other things like, okay, let's look at your LinkedIn profile, you know, let's go over your CV and what should be important to be in there or not, or, and so I've been with the same student for 2 years now. Her name is Gabrielle, you know, and like, I just enjoy my time with her so much. Like, I can't tell you, and I hope she does too, but like, we've just formed this really great bond. And unfortunately with COVID, we can't meet in person, but I'm dying to get her to the lab to show her, you know, what we do here, even though that's not really the industry she's focusing on. I think it's just really cool.
Is she on today? Did she sign up? We don't know.
I think she is on. Yeah.
Good. Love the shout out. There you go. So we have, we'll send you recording after, so if not, then she can check it out later too in here, because that's,
Okay.
I think that's important too, for them to know that, again, because you do learn from your mentee as well. Like they're teaching you things as well. Like you mentioned, your kids teaching you things, but also being a mentor, you learn from your mentees as well. So, and it's so funny that you bring up that topic, but of things that you talk about. But our last question is always, what are pieces of advice do you have for the women in our STEM club, or really anyone in STEM, that because even if we're older, we're still always looking for that, you're always looking to move up, right? And better yourself. So I guess the advice hits for everybody, but even though we're focusing on the women in STEM. So what would you tell 19-year-old Melanie?
How much time do I have?
All the time you need.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about a woman in a male dominated field, right? And so, in the lab, I can't say that the lab that I work in is male dominated, but when I go out to the field, it's entirely male dominated. For the most part, we do have female bomb techs, but 95% of the people there are male. They're officers, so they're alpha males, right? You have the special forces guys, like you have the military, you have all these very strong men. And then, someone like me that came in at that time that was young and just desperate to fit in. I think I was so desperate to fit in and thought I needed to fit in so badly that it became a detriment to me. And so that's, I think the best piece of advice is like really rely on your knowledge and find that confidence in you to be you. You don't need to fit in, because really what becomes respected is your ability to do your job, right? You don't need to be everyone's friend. They're looking to you for the answers. And so it took me a while, because I feel like I really used my femininity in a way that was really disturbing to me. Like it was a huge disservice, right? It was, but I thought I needed to. I thought that's how I was going to gain the respect. Whereas today, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to be the friendly, like people pleaser, and so I think that's one piece of advice as a woman in a man dominated environment: be unapologetically female and then move on, right? It doesn't need to be the thing they remember about you. So, I think, figure out your strengths and lean on those, and use your voice, and don't play small. And the other thing I would say is, I think what I loved most about my career was how challenging it was. I think had I not been in chemistry, I'm not sure I would have been as happy in my career as I am today. And I think that's because it was challenging for me. And I think to continue to seek to grow and to learn is like a must. It's absolutely a must. Like you have to seek growth and challenges, and you have to just lean into those hard times, because that's where you learn the most. So definitely that would be another one, is just seek to work somewhere where you're growing every day and you're challenged every day. And if that's not at your work, then you go do it as a side gig, right? You go, and we've talked about that, and I don't say that because I think everyone needs to have a side gig. I really don't. I think we all do it for different reasons, but that might be another place where you need to grow. And so for me, I have my own side gig, and I leverage that to be able to give back to communities, organizations that are important to me, that have some significance to me. And so, a few organizations that I've worked with locally are the Butterfly Run. We do chemo care packages every year for the Sudbury Cancer Center.
Nice.
And also Dress for Success in Ottawa, and haven't heard of those organizations, I strongly recommend you look into it if ever you're looking for a place to give back. Anyone here locally for the Butterfly Run and Dress for Success is across the country and in the US as well.
Maybe what we'll do is have you afterwards in the chat. You can pop it in the chat and then people can look up, and also promote would actually be a good one too.
Yes,
we'll
sure.
share the link for that as well, or if somebody wants to Google it and share it for us, they can. It would be wonderful. No, that's awesome, and I think that's a very big part, is that giving back and that sense of community, because without that, we can't grow. You know what I mean? If it's always about them, you have to be able to give back and share your knowledge and help that person along the way. And you don't even realize the people that you affect, because years later, I'll have people say, yeah, you told me this before and it totally changed my perspective of my life. And I'm like,
yeah.
Really? I was just saying that offhandedly. You didn't even realize it. So, when you're actually putting effort into mentoring, I think it makes such a difference for people. So no, it's great. Good for you.
Yeah. I think what social media has given us is that people are always listening and they're always watching, right? And when you think, you post something or you've taught on a course and you think nobody's going to remember that. No, people are listening. So yeah, it's important to use that responsibly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And remember those things that, people are always watching. And, there's like this one, I have to just say this and I'll stop talking, I promise. But there's this one.
You can talk as much as you want.
Quote that I love. So I got to go see Michelle Obama a few years ago.
Oh, cool.
Ottawa. And the one thing that stayed with me was she said, kids can't be what they can't see. And I was like, mind blown by that, because I had never thought of it that way. And it's the same with everyone in your community. It's not really just kids, but if someone, and that's why I think it's so important for me to include my kids in all of it, even in all the charitable work that I do, they're involved in that, because they need to see what it's like to give back. But sometimes you just have to show people, like people just need to see it to know it's possible, right? Because so many times we hold ourselves back and we say like, oh, well, I mean, she can do that, but I could never do that, right? No, yeah, you actually can. And here's how easy it is, because I'm going to show you. Just watch,
watch me.
Yeah, just watch me. Yeah.
I think that's speaks to the whole thing where people always say, just say yes. When somebody asks you, do you want to do this? Yes, I do. And you know what I mean? And truly want to do it, don't do it because you're doing something against your will, but just saying yes and having experiences and going forth, like it just builds on that. So, and I love the piece about, you talked about, keeping yourself kind of, I guess, that entertained by having your side gig, or always call it the side hustle. And I have always had 2 or 3 things going on the side, despite my main job, just because I like to keep, it's not the keeping busy, but I like that the hustle and bustle of that, and that side piece is a lot to it. It's not about making money. It's about just keeping busy and being active and experiencing things that you enjoy doing, picking things that you like, right?
And every time you step out of your comfort zone, right? Because meeting new people, you're learning new things. It's just, to me, well, I always get most joy as well out of giving back, being able to, I think it's so rewarding in such a different way from your career, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you giving back by coming and speaking with us tonight and sharing your story and all the things that go along with it and your words of wisdom. So that's wonderful. So usually at the end, we always do sort of the rapid fire, kind of just quick, lighthearted questions too. So I'm going to give you kind of the easy things, just come top of your head, whatever comes to mind. Okay. What is your current Netflix binge? What are you watching?
Nothing.
You're not? Are you not a Netflixer?
And what was the last one? Oh my gosh. Queen's Gambit was probably the last thing
good.
So good.
It was really, really good. Okay. Most used emoji.
Ooh. The fireball one or the dance lady. Yeah.
The fireball one. Is that fun? Okay, got it.
So many purposes, that one.
That's awesome. Audiobook or hardcover?
Audio lately, because I don't have time to always sit and read, unless I'm on vacation, but I prefer a book.
Okay.
Have
just having time to sit and read a book. That's the problem.
I need a vacation. That's what
we all need a vacation.
Yeah.
Can't wait to travel soon apparently. Okay, fries or salad?
Salad.
Yeah. And your first concert?
Oh, I think it was The Offspring or Metallica.
Both good shows.
Oh man, I'm from a small town.
She's a rock girl. I love it.
Very much
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so on that note, if there's anybody that has any questions that they would like to ask Melanie, you're welcome to. You can unmute yourself or turn your video on if you'd like. I know that everybody is so tired of being online all day, so it's not often we have a ton of questions, but if somebody had something that they wanted to, somebody actually posted in the chat the promote program. So thank you, Anne. We appreciate that.
She's actually in charge. One of
the
program. Yes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for joining us, Anne. Thank you. That's great. It says you're one of their mentors. They're very happy to have you as one of their mentors. I don't know if you can see the chat or not, but thank you. Is there anybody that has any questions for Mel that they wanted to? You could, again, like I say, welcome to turn on your microphone and unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat if you'd like. All right. All right. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we have any questions. Again, I will send you this out later as a recording, and so we will. Let me just think here. Okay.
Oh, I think I see one.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I think it's just a video. She's just got her video on. So. All
okay. Right. There's one in the chat. Do you want me to read it?
Hold on. Where's my chat? I lost it. In my telling you, where's my chat? I lost my chat.
Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
Here I can go. Hi, it's Julie Sparks. Nice to meet you, Melanie. I did have one question for you. It was just, how do you differentiate yourself from others at work? So you're in a small team, so how do you stand out from the rest?
I think in my line of work, it's just not about standing out. I think we are stronger as a team. And I think that sort of team mentality is fostered internationally. So we work extremely closely with chemists from the ATF and the FBI. It's really not about standing out in my field, I suppose. There's only so much opportunity for growth, and I'm not sure I'm ready to move into a management position because I love what I do so much. Mm-hmm. But I think just really for us becoming knowledgeable in your field, becoming recognized, right? Being the person that people want to turn to for advice. And that comes with time and experience and the ability to sort of demonstrate that I got this, and I think that was like a super defining moment for me when we had all these men on a scene and all these bomb techs and everybody's yelling about what we should do. And somebody, and the supervisor said, stop, I want to hear what Melanie has to say, and that for me was like, whoa, okay, I've proven my value at some point here, to the point where they want to hear me. So, but I would want that for everyone on my team. Do you know what I mean? I want everyone to be that strong, because if we're all strong together, then we become those people that everyone wants to come to. And I think that's why we share so much internationally as well. Like we're constantly emailing each other, the chemists from the FBI or the chemists from the ATF. Hey, we've come across this compound and we've never seen this before. Have you guys seen it? We need to just be a huge team. Well, not huge team. We're a small team. There's not that many forensic explosive chemists out there, but we need to really just play in the sandbox well together, because we lean on each other a lot.
Absolutely. Well, you have another question here from Daniel. Asks, what advice do you have for people who may be looking to find a career in the forensic chemistry field?
So if you're still in school, my advice to you is try to get an internship. You know, I think getting all the way to a PhD, if you're thinking chemistry, you know, getting your PhD is certainly an asset. It's not mandatory. I don't have my PhD. You know, what helped me was being able to go in person and having that internship, improving myself, improving my worth. And I think to this day, that's still the advice I give people. Try to get to a school that has internship programs, or if you can, I know the government of student employment opportunities, and we often hire out of that pool for summer students. Try to get a summer student position in a lab. Even if you want to be in forensics and the lab you're going to has nothing to do with forensics, that's okay. Any lab experience is good. So I think the more experience you can get, you know, students get paid really well through the government of Canada, so look that up. But yeah, the more experience, the better. And you need to be well-rounded in forensics. You need to have the ability to think critically. So sort of exercise that muscle as well. You know, lead projects, that kind of stuff. Prove your ability to work as a team. You know, those kinds of things are all great assets for forensics, for sure.
I think those are great assets for any career, really. Like, it's all great.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Yeah.
And so the last question is from Adam. Is your a French background an asset in your daily work environment?
Yes. So federal government. So yes. Actually, you know, so because I work in explosives, you know, my territory or my catchment, if you will, for cases is the entire country for the RCMP. Yeah, we get a lot of cases out of Quebec. And they're French. The whole write-up is in French. They want the report in French. When we go testify, it has to be in French. So yeah, it's been a huge asset. Is it a requirement? Is it mandatory? No. But it is mandatory for at least each unit to have 2 French-speaking people, because we do have to have our files reviewed before we go to court. And so there needs to be one person writing and one person that reviews the work and makes sure it's all properly done. So definitely, it basically gives me the ability to do more casework, I suppose.
Wait, do you get more piled on you because you can do it in French and the others can't? You should rethink that and maybe not tell them you know it.
Yeah. No, no, it doesn't get piled anymore. Not at all. No. Burden, I suppose.
That's a great question. So we have Serena put the link for the Canada Summer Jobs for us here at the Job Bank for the government, which is great.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Serena. That's great. And then Mel, I'll have you add a couple of those other ones, the Butterfly Project. You know, those are interesting things to get involved with too. I always like to hear about those kind of, you know, projects, and especially the ones that are available here as well. So anyway, well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight. And a special thank you to Melanie for her inspirational talk and sharing her story and her wisdom, her wise words. It was really good stories tonight. It was great to hear. So if you are a St. Clair College student or are going to be one and you would like more information on the Women in STEM Club, or you are working in STEM and are a leader in your field and are interested in being featured on our speaker series or acting as a mentor for one of the incredible young women in our STEM club, you can email us at genesis@stclaircollege.ca to sign up. So the Genesis Entrepreneurship Center is host to many workshops and events just like this one. And the best thing is that everything that we offer is free here. All you need to do is register on Eventbrite or via the links on our Genesis webpage, which is at www.stclaircollege.ca/Genesis. So the STEM speaker series will be taking a short hiatus for June. We're gonna take a month off so I can have a little break, and we'll be back in action in July. And we will be talking with Laura Cayley, who is a pilot with Air Canada. So I also wanted to share the outcome. We had a recent STEM event that occurred May 10th. It was held for high school students and their parents to encourage them to pursue careers in STEM and skilled trades. And we hosted a panel of women in STEM professions, and they talked again about the coolest things about their jobs. And then we also did a little showcase of our current STEM club members. So it was an online event, and it also acted as a fundraising effort. So all the proceeds donated went to West, which is the Windsor Enterprise Skills Training of Windsor. And we basically raised $1,175 in donations and sponsorships for that event. And so special thanks to our sponsors for it, which were Antonino's Pizza and Wave Direct. Mel, if you ever come to Windsor, you're going to have to go to Antonino's and have. Windsor has the best pizza. So we'll have to get you there. I don't know if you've had it yet there. So we will be having a check presentation with West as soon as restrictions lift. So stay tuned for that. And thank you so much for joining us and supporting the St. Clair College Women in STEM Club. And again, thank you to our guest, Mel, who was a great speaker today, and for joining us tonight. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks, Mel.